Oh boy, do we have a lot to talk about. Hello, Canucks fans, and welcome back to another episode of Canucks Conversation, which is brought to you by the great folks over at Greta. Greta's a great spot for all games, home and away. We'll be there for CanucksArmy viewing parties throughout the season, the first of which, I'm very pleased to announce, October 19th, 4 p.m. start against I think it's the Flyers, right? I should have looked.
On Friday, yeah.
Yeah. No.
Oh,
19th, not this Friday. Because actually, the Canucks play the Flyers twice in rapid succession. So where's the best place to watch Matvei Michkov in his rookie year, Harman?
Greta.
That's absolutely correct. Canucks are visiting the Flyers on the 19th. We'll be there for the watch party. Greta's a great spot for all games, no matter when they are. Just minutes from the arena. Come by before and after the game, or during the game, or whatever your event you're already downtown for. With weekly drink specials, Greta Bar YVR is the place to be. 50 West Cordova Street is the address. Let the games begin. Let the games begin. Vancouver Canucks general manager Patrik Allvin presumably said on a Sunday afternoon. Do you think his family's just trying to watch Red Zone? You know, maybe his son's got the NLDS on. And he's like, hold on, I need well, I guess you don't need to free up internet lines anymore. That's a little bit before our time. But Patrik Allvin was working on Sunday, is what I'm trying to say. The Canucks made a flurry of moves on Sunday. We're going to break it all down. Dave Guajarelli, alongside Harman Dialer. Technical producer is Jacob Lazar. That was a very fast intro. I'm fired up. I'm not going to lie to you.
You're dialed in on...
Had a little espresso. And how can you not? How can you not have a little espresso when things are moving the way they're moving?
People that are listening on 2x speed.
Look, people should know you can't listen to this podcast on 2x speed. That's just the way it is, especially in season when there's just, off-season shows, maybe, get through me talking about the Mariners faster. I get it. But right now, it's all hockey, and there is a lot to talk about. Harman, let's start with the news just moments ago. The Canucks finalizing their opening season roster. They're going to go with a 23-man roster. They're going to accrue cap space from day one. We don't have exactly the math on their roster just yet. That's going to be coming out shortly, but we do know that the final cut did end up being, as we assumed it would be, Arshdeep Bains getting sent down to the minors.
Yeah, it was the easiest path. I think we all agreed that Ratu deserved to make the opening night roster over Arshdeep Bains, and then it was just a matter of, well, Oman would require waivers to get sent down and would be a candidate to get claimed, whereas Bains doesn't need to clear waivers to get sent down. So it's really down to that, because if it was just purely based off merit, I think we'd agree that Bains probably deserved to make it over Oman. I was a little bit underwhelmed with Oman. I felt like at last year's camp in preseason, there was noticeable progress that he made in terms of looking a little bit faster, a little bit stronger on his feet. And I thought to myself, okay, this looks like an improved player. Whereas this year at camp and preseason, I just didn't feel like he really took a step. But I can also understand why the Canucks look at him. He's still relatively young. He can play center. He can play wing. If he can just improve on his faceoffs, there's still value in him as a defensive specialist, somebody that can help on the PK as well. And for Bains as well, would you rather be sitting in the press box or playing top line in Abbey and knowing that you're the next guy up to play NHL games and slot directly into the lineup when an opportunity arises?
We're not going to talk much about the last preseason game, but one thing we are going to mention is that was a hell of a game from Arshdeep Bains, who leaves with a very strong final impression. And obviously, you make a really good point that he's going to be the first call-up when they need a winger. We saw him play in the top 6 last year. If they need someone in the top 6, he's probably going to be that call-up. So lots of opportunity for Arshdeep Bains.
I'll also say, one thing that I noticed about him immediately at Young Stars and in training camp through preseason is that he looks much faster too. We spent a lot of time talking about Ratu's improved skating. Bains also looks quicker. He looks more explosive with his acceleration, his first 2 steps. I think that's part of the reason why in the Edmonton preseason game, for example, he was able to apply a lot more pressure on the forecheck, be more disruptive, force the other team's players into having to make quicker decisions. I think that's an essential thing as far as him taking the next step. Plus, I also think with the puck, that's allowed him to be more crafty, more elusive, more creative, all of which is the type of progress that you want to see from him if he's to eventually develop into an NHL player.
Especially when we hone in on who this player is, right? And it's somebody that from the get-go we've known has a high hockey IQ. It's just that he needs his legs to catch up to his brain, if that makes sense. And he almost needs to just put the pieces together, because you can see that he's thinking on a high level, but now everything's happening really fast too. So it's great that you can think that fast, but can you execute that fast? And I think that's where the problem started to arise for Baines last year. So again, you're right. A really good sign for him this camp.
Especially because realistically, he's not going to be a full-time top 6 NHL player just because of how deep this Canucks roster is. So if he is going to make a mark and establish himself, play a lot of games for the Canucks this season, it's going to be towards the bottom end of the lineup, third line, fourth line, more realistically. And coaches on a fourth line, they're looking for energy. They're looking for pace. They're looking for players that can get in on the forecheck. And providing offense and being defensively responsible, those are important boxes to check too. But it's that energy and speed element that Baines can hopefully lean more into, so that he's not caught as a tweener where it's like he's too good for the AHL offensively, but doesn't quite have enough dynamic skill to stick there. And sometimes players end up in that pocket where they're not physical or fast enough or a PK type to stick in a bottom 6 capacity either.
Joining him in Abbotsford, Jiri Patera and Erik Brannstrom. A busy weekend, to say the least, for the Canucks. Let's get into their moves on Sunday. There's 3 that we need to talk, or not 3. The Patera thing. Let's start with Patera. We'll start with Patera, get out of the way, then we'll get to the Brannstrom and, of course, Nils Hoglander as well. Jiri Patera, we kind of knew it was coming the minute Jeremy Swayman got signed. 8 years by 8.25 in Boston. I think that's too much. I said it last week that I thought 8 by 8 was too much for just don't go long term with your goalies. That's what I was saying last week, and I stand by it, especially that 8.25. I think that's going to be an ugly contract in a hurry. Do you want to make a quick bet? You're not even going to bet me, but that he's not finishing that contract in Boston.
Wow. Okay, that's a bold take.
You don't think it's okay?
I'm not necessarily agreeing.
I don't think it's that bold. Can you name another goalie that's lasted 8 years in the place? No.
True, but how many goaltenders with that much term? I guess you got he could get moved halfway through that contract and you'd still be right. So
had Carey Price stayed healthy, he would have still been a Montreal Canadian on his contract.
Vasilevsky will.
Okay, excellent, boys.
But
you're a Habs fan. Did you just compare Jeremy Swayman to Carey Price? Did you just compare Jeremy Swayman to Andrei Vasilevsky?
You just asked a general question about how many goalies stay.
Yeah, so that's my point. The ones you're naming are above cream of the crop, elite.
Yeah.
Above the level of Jeremy Swayman, but Swayman's not bad. He's on the tier below those guys, sure. But yeah, I agree with you, Quads. I don't think he's going to finish the contract in Boston. He's not on that level that you see for goalies who get an 8-year deal and stick it out with one team.
Miss L said Luongo in the chat again. Is Jeremy Swayman going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer? Remind me of all the years where Luongo was splitting starts. You can't. Okay, I don't want to get in on this. This is not where we were going. Jiri Patera, the point is, got put on waivers. I said it yesterday as well. I tweeted it out. Patera wasn't even the best goalie from Boston that was on waivers, because Brandon Bussey also got put on waivers, and he didn't get claimed. He's down in Providence now in the AHL. Patera did get claimed, but because the Canucks were the only team to put in a claim on Patera, I didn't know this rule. Did you know this rule prior to this weekend? Oh, great. I didn't. Because they were the only team to put in a claim on Patera, he doesn't have to go on waivers again. They can claim him and immediately put him in the AHL. Whereas if another team had him or claimed him, they would have needed to keep him at the NHL level for 30 days or something?
Yeah, something like that. But also, I was just thinking from the human element. Imagine being Jiri Patera, right? You sign in Vancouver. You expect to stay in the Lower Mainland because the AHL team's in Abbotsford.
Yeah, totally.
You get placed on waivers, which isn't a surprise because he likely knew that he was going to be an AHL goaltender for this team.
He signed a 2-way contract. He knows. He knows.
He randomly gets claimed by Boston, moves all the way across the continent to closer to the East Coast. At that point, it's not a case where you know that Jeremy Swayman is going to sign.
Totally. You have to get ready to get your life ready over there.
You're thinking, oh, this is an opportunity to perform well in preseason, maybe stake a claim on an NHL job. And if Swayman, who knows how long it's going to take to resolve that contract situation. And then a week later, you're back on waivers and having to go all the way back to Vancouver.
I can't wait to talk to Patera about this, about the moving back and forth. That's unbelievable for a goalie to have to go through, for anybody to have to go through. I wonder though, how far into the moving process, did Jiri Patera sign a lease in Boston to rent?
Almost certainly not.
You don't think so?
I don't think so.
Well,
Hotel.
The player, yeah.
You got to
almost
know.
certainly,
You got to know.
100%. Like
yeah.
you got to know. Like teams will, teams and players will usually communicate that like, hey, get a place. Now, it is interesting where sometimes a team will tell a player to get a place because it's like, oh, you're sticking in the NHL. And then the player signs the lease and then they still send him down. Like there was a report the other day about David Jiricek with the last regime where they told him to get a place that he was sticking in Columbus, and then less than like a week later they sent him down.
And he was only making like 70 grand on the AHL salary.
Yeah. And, anyway, like I talked to Jack Studnicka about this too, especially in the COVID year. He was on a 2-way contract where during that year salaries were prorated, and so you were making even less than like that $70K minimum. And so he had a place in Boston that he was renting because the team had told him to get a place. He also had to get a place in, near Providence, and his AHL salary didn't cover his rent in Boston. Now he had savings. He was totally fine. He kind of like laughed about it, but pretty funny to think that his AHL paycheck wasn't able to pay off his, the place that he was renting in Boston because he thought he was going to stick in the NHL.
The stories of the minors. The story of the minors. There's a lot to get to here, Harm. We just said it. So Jiri Patera back. He's going to be with the AHL. Quickly, I'll just touch on this. We were talking about last week how this would impact the Canucks goaltending down in Abbotsford. If they didn't get Patera back, they have him back, so it doesn't really matter. It's going to be a Tolopilo Patera split. I'm wondering if they carry a third goaltender in Ty Young, or if Ty Young goes and plays in the ECHL with Jonathan Lemieux. That would be the tandem down in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Okay. You don't have any other Patera takes that you want to get to?
No.
All right, let's get to the Canucks moves, which happened on late Sunday morning. The Canucks acquired 26-year-old left defenseman Erik Brannstrom from the Colorado Avalanche, sending back Tucker Poolman at 20% retained, along with a 4th-round pick. Of course, as we mentioned, this means that the Canucks are going to be able to accrue cap space right from the get-go. They're going to be able to carry a 23-man roster. This is a massive move for the team heading into this year.
Absolutely, especially because last year I don't think we fully appreciated how much creativity and maneuvering it required just for the Canucks to be able to land the pieces that they did, right? The Canucks were fortunate to be able to, for example, get off of Beauvillier's contract so that they could go out and acquire Zadorov, because otherwise they wouldn't have been able to take on the full freight of a salary. And if you remember, Craig Conroy at the time was speaking about how what differentiated Vancouver from, let's say, Toronto and some of the other teams that were interested is that Toronto would have needed Calgary to retain. And because the Flames had so many trade chips that they may have needed to retain on in terms of like Hanifin and Tanev and Markstrom, they didn't want to retain on Zadorov. And so despite having similar offers, that's why Vancouver was able to win. But what would have happened if nobody was willing to take on Beauvillier? And remember, Chicago only took on Beauvillier because they were decimated by forward injuries, right? So that would have been a perfect example of LTIR screwing them over, again, had they not had the out on Beauvillier, and also for the Elias Lindholm trade, right? They needed to include Andrei Kuzmenko, so it was dollar in, dollar out. Now, for this season, if they had been in LTIR, the problem is they don't have a Beauvillier or a Kuzmenko where it's like a player on a significant salary that's expendable. Now that's obviously a good thing, right? Because you don't want players on bloated contracts that you don't need or want. But the point is, it would have been a lot more difficult of a dance compared to last year if they had, let's say, approached a trade deadline and they're in LTIR and don't have a lot of flexibility. You would have had to get really creative in terms of double retention, and it just makes things really complicated.
I'm happy I don't have to read about LTIR for a while. Shout out to Stefan Roger. He does all our LTIR stuff over at CanucksArmy. But I'm like editing it. And
knock on wood when you say that.
Yeah.
You never know what can happen.
Yeah. There we go. Knocked on the wood. New tables, by the way. They look great here for those watching on the YouTube live show. But I am excited not to read about LTIR for a bit. Knock on wood. But shout out to Stefan. He does a great job over at CanucksArmy. But I'm editing the work, and I'm just like, I don't know much of this. Like, I'm just trusting that he knows what he's talking about sometimes.
Yeah, and also for Colorado, this was a smart win-win trade for both sides, right? Because I know some people were like, well, why did Colorado do this? Well, Colorado was going to be an LTIR anyway because of the Gabe Landeskog situation. So for them to take on Poolman, it has zero impact on their flexibility or cap maneuvering. They were going to have the restrictions of being an LTIR anyway. Now for them, they essentially turned a recent July 1st signing in Erik Brannstrom, who they were going to waive anyway because he struggled in preseason, into a 4th-round pick. So they basically created an asset out of thin air. So this is, I think, a shrewd, smart trade for both sides.
Absolutely. Brannstrom was put on waivers, and he cleared waivers today. The Canucks got, like I said, with Patera and Brannstrom clearing, that's the best case scenario for the Canucks today. It could have gone differently. Like, again, a team could have claimed Patera, and they would be stuck with a bad situation in the AHL with their goaltending. A team could have claimed Brannstrom, and then the guy that I think they're excited about, like, I think you have to be excited. It's a guy who played.
I don't know if they're excited about him.
It's a guy who played. Well, I agree with you to some extent, because if they were that excited, they probably wouldn't put him on waivers. But that being said, I think you should be excited. This is a guy who played in the NHL for the past 2 seasons, put up 20 points last year, 18 the season before that, and like 70 odd games in each season. It's not crazy point totals for a guy who was offense first, and that's kind of his MO. But he is another bullet in the chamber for the staff down in Abbotsford to work with. And it's a very crowded blue line down in Abbotsford. I think we'll save that. We'll talk about that toward the end of the show, because there's other things to chew on here. But with Brannstrom, he definitely intrigues me. I think there has to be some upside there. He just turned 26 last month. He turned 26 years old, so still on the younger side. And I'm curious what he can have unlocked if he's down in Abbotsford, and what he's going to be able to do down there.
Yeah, I'm intrigued, but I also think the style and profile of defenseman he is, I'm not sure that he's a type of D-man that, let's say, Rick Tocchet and Adam Foote would be that high on, just because of how much they've emphasized having size and defensive ability. Brannstrom's interesting because I think that he has the potential to be a number 6-7 legit NHL defenseman, but he's caught where the style of player that he is just not very attractive to most front offices, most coaches, because he's like, if you're going to be an undersized guy and you're going to excel on a third pair, teams are looking for you to be really dynamic offensively and to provide power play value. Brannstrom's not high end enough in that regard, so he doesn't check that box off. Or the other option is, if you're going to be, let's say, a Troy Stetcher, you've got to be above average defensively, which Brannstrom definitely is not. His defensive play can be suspect at times. So that leaves a scenario where I'm sure a lot of coaches and managers go, well, he's just an in-between guy. Like, what role does he fill? Despite me looking at him and going, well, he's got some speed, he's got some puck moving element. It's that transition side of it where last year in Ottawa, even some of the seasons beforehand, he's driven some pretty good underlying numbers in sheltered third pair minutes, but it's just not an attractive player style where coaches and managers would much rather have, let's say, Noah Juleson type, where
just gonna say
it's not that Juleson's better than Brannstrom. In fact, Brannstrom might be better than Juleson, but they would rather have a guy that has such a clear identity that, okay, he's big, he kills penalties, he's physical. That's how we want to build our number 6, 7, 8 pipeline of depth defensemen, as opposed to an undersized guy that we may or may not trust defensively.
Okay, another move that the Canucks made, Nils Hoglander, an undersized guy.
Just wanted to add,
sure.
To close out the Brannstrom conversation, I will say that having that depth there is valuable.
For sure.
I'm right now, I'm viewing Brannstrom as a Christian Wolanin upgrade, because Wolanin was probably going to be the next man up in the case of a left side injury. And that's something that you have to be mindful of, because both Soucy and Forbort missed a lot of time with injuries last year. If they end up running into health issues again, would Wolanin have been potentially the next call up? And Wolanin didn't play a single NHL game last year. So now you go from a guy who your first recall is somebody that didn't even play NHL games last year, to Brannstrom played basically the entire season in the NHL. That's a significant upgrade there. And it gives you another option in case puck moving becomes an issue with the bottom four, because they've sort of stocked up on these bigger defensemen that aren't the best with the puck.
I like the idea of a Wolanin upgrade. I like thinking about it through that lens. Before we get to the Höglander conversation, I'm going to tell everybody about the watch party. Okay?
Go for it.
Listen up. The season's here, and what better way to kick it off than with your crew at Greta? It's all going down on Saturday, October 19th at our home for the fans, Greta Bar YVR. Doors open at 3 p.m. and you know the drill. Tickets are already going fast, so hit up nationgear.ca before they're gone. We've got it all. Prizes, trivia, and more to keep the energy buzzing all night long. And this time, we're doing it for a great cause, supporting the BC Mental Health Foundation. Don't miss out on the biggest kickoff party of the year. Be there or hear about it all season long. Visit nationgear.ca to reserve your spot. I'll be there. Harm might be there. I picked the 4 p.m. start. I got to pick the days this year.
Nice.
I'm a big be at home, bundled in bed by 9 o'clock guy. So
yeah, 7 p.m. starts, especially in Gastown, having to go back home after.
Totally. And it's fun. It's not too bad. We're going to have some at 7 p.m.
Yeah.
So watch it. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just joking. But I'm excited. 4 p.m. start on Saturday, October 19th. Get your tickets, like I said, nationgear.ca. Okay, Patrik Allvin's going to speak today at 2:30. The results of that are going to kind of trickle in. I'm expecting an update on Höglander, or not an update, but his thoughts on the Höglander contract, that sort of stuff. We're going to give ours in just a moment here. But some other things I'm paying attention to from Allvin. Do we have an update on Thatcher Demko, Dakota Joshua? Darren Dreger was on our friend Sakaris and Price show earlier today, and he laid out kind of a 3 to 4 week timeline for both of those players. That would line up with kind of what Irfan Gafar said on Rinkwide, best post-game show in the market. Make sure you're listening to it after each game. Irf hinted at Halloween being when Demko really starts to ramp things up. So we can kind of look forward to that in the next month or so for both Joshua and Demko. But I'm curious what the team says, if there's a timeline, that sort of stuff. So anything else that you're paying attention to from Allvin?
No, I think those are the main ones.
Those are the main ones.
I'd say as far as Demko and Joshua, I'm going to stay cautiously optimistic. Right? Because with Demko, clearly there's been setbacks along the way. This is such a rare injury. He's hit a wall before, especially as he gets closer to ramping back up, facing off against NHL shooters, practice environment, post-integration. You just never know what complications might arise, what issues he might run into. So I'm being cautiously optimistic. It is good to hear, though, that there's at least some type of potential target for when he's going to ramp back up, just because when we spoke to him, there was no timeline at the time. And yeah, he'd mentioned that the last 2 or 3 weeks, there had been a lot of progress, but just the overall tone and vibe of his availability at training camp, it didn't make me immediately think, oh, he might only be, let's say, a month into the regular season before he's potentially ready to ramp back up.
Want to talk Höglander?
Let's do it.
Nils Hoglander signed to a 3-year, $3 million contract on Sunday afternoon. I was trying to watch Red Zone and the NLDS. I had to turn that game off in the 8th inning.
I don't know what game you're talking about. I don't watch
Mets Phillies. It was
baseball.
A good game, and I had to turn it off. But then I got to see Dodgers Padres. We're not going to talk baseball. That was a promise today. Was that we're only talking hockey. So Nils Hoglander, a 3-year contract at $3 million. Clearly, this is a bet by the team on Höglander's upside. Had arbitration rights heading into next year. This is a player-friendly contract in the way that A, it's guaranteed money, and B, it takes him right to free agency, right? Like to unrestricted free agency. He's going to be able to, test the market at a relatively young age, kind of like what Jake DeBrusk had when he was 27 years old. Höglander's going to be UFA in 2028. He'll be 27 at that time. So he'll be on the younger side of free agents, just like Jake DeBrusk was. So maybe it's a chance for him to cash in if he obviously performs at a really high level on this contract. But the question I had for you, Harm, is if Höglander scored, let's just say 20, not even 24.
Yeah.
20 even strength goals this year, and then he headed into arbitration. What is his next contract looking like? Because I was looking at it and thinking it was probably in like the $4.5 to $5 million range.
I don't know if he would have crossed into 5 million, sounds high, but it definitely would have been higher than 3 million. And I think that's the scenario that the Canucks are now sheltered from in getting ahead of this and signing the contract now, because you're right. Had he had another 20-goal season, which let's say that was also combined with him eating up more minutes ice time wise and playing a more regular top 6 role, he would have had a really strong arbitration case. I also think for Höglander to be a $3 million player, it doesn't require him to do a whole lot to live up to that deal. Like,
Yeah.
all he really needs to do is be a third line caliber forward. And I'm really confident he can do that. He's already a really strong 5-on-5 play driver. And even if he takes a modest step closer to being, let's say, like a low end top 6 player, you're already, as the Vancouver Canucks, gaining surplus value on that contract, getting good value out of it. Now, this isn't like a guarantee. There is some downside risk for this. From
he was a healthy scratch in the playoffs last.
Yeah, and also he scored on
most recent
20%
playoffs.
of his shots last year, right? Like, the goal scoring could taper off, especially if his minutes don't go up. He still has to earn Tocchet's trust to play more than 11, 12 minutes a night. But I'm willing to bet on his talent and skill set. I think it's a smart, like, risk to reward ratio for the Canucks to take here. And I wonder to myself, as far as like upside, could he be a Garland-like player? Now, I don't think Höglander is going to be productive enough on the power play to become a 50-point scorer the way Garland has necessarily, but can he be, let's say, the 40-point version of Connor Garland, which a player like Garland is more valuable than his point totals indicate because he can single-handedly drive a third line.
Yep.
I just see the ingredients of Höglander's speed, his forechecking, how he controls the puck down low in the offensive zone. And I'm thinking to myself, can he become really close to being a Garland caliber player? And if he's close to a Garland caliber player at $3 million for the next 3 seasons, that would be terrific value.
Cap's going up too, right? Like, if the cap's going up, what is a $3 million player look like in 2-3 years, right? And not only that, but again, we're talking about certainty. When you have the OEL buyout starting to really hurt, you have some certainty. And again, it's just better for the Canucks to get this done now, because now that's one less thing for them to worry about when they're mapping out their next few years, especially heading into this offseason as well.
That cost certainty is huge because it'll also affect them at, let's say, the trade deadline. They're looking at non-rental players. Maybe it's a top 4 defenseman that has 2 years left on his deal. It's a lot easier to forecast, okay, can we fit this defenseman's contract in if you have more certainty with, okay, we know exactly what Höglander is going to cost, because next summer the Canucks are going to face a bit of a cap crunch. There's, of course, the uncertainty around Besser's pending UFA status. So now it just helps create a clearer picture so that they can make more informed decisions at the deadline and even going into the offseason, knowing what they can afford to pay Brock and just having to juggle less balls in the air, essentially.
Someone brought it up to me. They said, if Höglander scores 25, touches 30 goals. If Höglander scores 30 goals, you're all of a sudden looking at, okay, it's either Brock or Höglander.
No, he's not. But that's the thing. Like, I'd be shocked.
No, exactly. But if he did, you would be looking at, okay, it's either Brock or Nils Hoglander. You can't have both. You can't fit both in. A 30-goal scorer?
Probably not.
You can't, but it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's just something that someone brought up.
That's the other thing is, I think Höglander's point in like goal total upside isn't like I'd be shocked if there's another big breakout beyond here, and that's related to power play. Like, Höglander's already almost maxed out what a player can realistically do at 5-on-5, right? He was top 10 in even strength goals, up there with legit stars. For a player's point totals really pop beyond this, they have to become a legit power play contributor, and I just don't get the sense that he's going to get that opportunity.
I hear you, but he got the opportunity in the preseason, the second power play unit in that final game against Edmonton. If we're going to have any takes from that game, the second power play unit looked better than the first power play unit, and Daniel Sprong's here to stay. As
soon as Dakota Joshua comes back, I bet you Höglander is getting bumped from that net front spot in favor of Joshua.
Yes, okay, from the net front spot, but I think they will still find a spot for him on that second power play unit.
See, think about how long it took Tocchet to even trust Höglander in PP2 last year.
That's true.
I'm not saying Höglander doesn't have the skill for it. I don't think the coaching staff is going to give him that consistent opportunity on the power play, which limits his ceiling, which is fine. But the point I was trying to make is there's still so much growth for him as like a two-way driver and being an even strength catalyst. It's, again, sort of like the Garland effect where he can drive a line further down the lineup on third line almost on his own.
K-Town Chef has a question for you, Harm. He said, why can't Höglander be more than that? He's only 23, 11th highest scoring player from his draft class. Every other pick but one ahead of him was a first-round pick. That's the other thing. That 2019 draft, the only thing the Canucks have to show for it at this point are Höglander and Archer Shelovs, who was taken in the 6th round. Sleepak Colson obviously gone. But sorry, let's get to that question for you. Every other pick ahead of him but one was a first-round pick.
Well, he's got upside beyond like the 36 points. And that stems from just him playing a lot more at even strength, hopefully. But again, it's you can't be, let's say, a 60 point scorer without getting a decent chunk of points on the power play. And at least for this season, like maybe it can happen 2-3 years down the road towards the end of that contract. I just don't see him getting that opportunity.
Okay. Anything else?
And that's not a knock on him, to
No.
be very clear. It's also like he'd have that upside if he was, let's say, on a rebuilding team where a team doesn't have a lot of talented scoring forwards, and now he's thrust into power play 1 or a more prominent power
Top
play
6,
2 role. The Canucks are just a lot deeper when it comes to top line forward options now. It's not a bad thing for the Canucks to be in the spot where they've got a really talented young forward who we're talking about as, well, he might not crack consistent power play opportunity. That's, again, not a knock on Höglander and his skill set. That's just a reflection of how deep they are at forward right now.
What would Nils Hoglander put up if he was on Chicago? Because right now, Ilya Mikheyev is lining up next to Connor Bedard on line 1 in Chicago. You're thinking there's going to be power play time coming there.
Well, Philip Kurashev scored 54 points.
Yes.
And this is, again, like I'm telling you, when it comes to point totals in production, people
bad teams score. Bad teams score.
Mikhail Granlund scored 60 points in 69 games just because he's the first line center in San Jose, because they were awful last year, plays first unit power play. Like opportunity, line mates, these factors have way more of an impact on production than you would assume. I think the common thought is just to look at, is this player skilled enough or talented enough not to be a 50, 60, 70 point scorer, when so much of it is the opportunity.
Conversation in the chat. Höglander puts up 30 goals, 40 assists on Chicago. I like it. Over under Ilya Mikheyev point total. Season prediction. Jacob, add it to the season predictions. This is a sidebar. Ilya Mikheyev point total.
You're not
season.
getting me to.
Oh, come on.
Off 5 seconds.
Have some fun. Ilya Mikheyev, total points. He's playing with Connor Bedard. I'll give you over under. You don't have to give me the exact number. Right. Over under, and I'll just take whatever you don't take. Okay. I have no firm opinion on this. Ilya Mikheyev over under 40 points this season. Be a career high. I think I'm taking the over.
I'll
you
take
taking
the
under? Perfect. Works out perfectly. I do think he breaks 40 points.
He could. Honestly, especially if he gets his speed back, but A, he gets hurt a lot, and B, I'm just not banking on Mikheyev sticking in that spot next to Bedard.
I think give Bedard like 4 games of watching Mikheyev shoot muffins into a goalie's logo, and Mikheyev will no longer be playing with Connor Bedard.
Kelly Canuck is setting it at 50 in the chat. I think 40 is fair. 40 is a
40 is
career
reasonable.
High. 32 is the career high right now to beat.
He could hit that.
Set in Vancouver, by the way, or 31. No, 32. Sorry, 32 in Toronto is the career high. Then he signed the contract in Vancouver. But hey, that first season he was here. Then again, they still had Bruce Boudreau that year, right? When Mikheyev was putting up the points.
Yeah.
All right, makes sense then. All right, let's see. 40 points. Let's see it. Ilya Mikheyev. Okay, Patrik Allvin starting to speak now. We're going to get updates kind of trickling in, I would assume, throughout the rest of the show. But you ready to get to anyone else? Did you have anything else on Höglander? Anything on the weekend moves? Did we miss anything? Like, there was so much that happened. We got Brannstrom. We got Patera. Höglander. Is there anything else that we missed?
I don't think so.
Let's get to anyone else. We'll talk a little bit about the game while we wait for Allvin. Let's get to anyone else, which is brought to you. New sponsor alert. It's powered by Square. If you run a restaurant, you're too busy for this ad. You're thinking about how to get more orders flowing and new locations opening. Locations opening. You need to get more customers and keep them coming back. So really, you're already thinking about Square, because Square Restaurant Tech helps more than 400,000 restaurants do all those things and more. So when you're thinking about your restaurant, think bigger and think Square. Go to squareup.com/ca/en/campaign/big-in-RST to see why Square is big in restaurants.
I was also going to say,
I'll get better at that.
is Isn't it crazy, by the way, that it's only been the last couple of years that the States have, for example, you go out to a restaurant. I remember my first couple of seasons on the road. I'm so used to Canada where you just tap or you
Yes.
just present your card like that. They have the machine or square or something, right? Whereas in the States, they have like they would give you the checkbook.
Yes.
And you would have to like
Write it down,
write it
give them
down,
your
give
card.
and then they take the card. And I remember the first time that happening because I hadn't dined out at a restaurant in the States before, not using cash. And I was so used to the Canadian way of doing it where you just like tap and they like took the card and the book. And I was like, hold on, what's going on here? I was like kind of worried because it was like,
where are you going?
It was also just like a quieter restaurant where I was like, oh, what are they doing with my card? Kind of crazy that it's only been the last couple of years that the States has caught up with Canada.
It was COVID, I think. I remember going down to the States before COVID, and it was couldn't tap anywhere, couldn't use Canadian debit cards. And then after COVID, the first time going down, all of a sudden all the vending machines had tap on them. I couldn't believe like how quickly they caught up. But I mean, they caught up. Canada's had all that for like 8 or 9 years now, right? We're used to it.
Did we just start? We read a Square ad and now we just started the discourse about tapping our cards. It really is anyone else, folks. We talk about anything in anyone else. Everybody in the chat, whether you're watching on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, wherever you're watching, get your comments in right now because it's time, of course, for anyone else. And if you're on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a show. We are live at 2 p.m. every weekday, but I also want to mention we've made the executive decision on game days, since we kind of serve as a bit of a pregame show, we're going to go live at 1 o'clock on game days. So you can look for that this week on Wednesday and, of course, Friday as well. The show will be going live at 1 o'clock rather than 2 o'clock. So, again, those people that drive home and listen to Canucks Convo, you're going to get it sooner if Jacob remembers to upload the podcast. Sorry, Jacob, had to take one dig.
Yeah, I think that was a technical error, not me forgetting, but I don't actually know for sure. So yes, I will accept.
We'll give you a pass.
Appreciate the honesty.
We'll give you a pass. We'll give you a pass. Yeah, a little bit of a delay on Friday's episode, but again, it's not all Jacob's fault. Like you and I didn't notice. Someone messaged me on Sunday evening. They're like, "Hey, did the podcast not get posted?" I'm like, "Uh-oh." We got it up. We got it up though. So yeah, game days 1 o'clock start, so it's going to be out a little bit sooner, so people can listen to it on those game days. Going to be really helpful, especially for the 4 p.m. starts. I love 4 p.m. starts, but I also like 7 p.m. starts, Harm. I also like 7 p.m. starts. Okay, let's get to some more from the chat. This one from Conversation. I want to see Brannstrom get a chance to play with Desharnais. I think they'll fit well together. You talked about Brannstrom as this kind of, offensive defenseman light kind of thing. That's basically who Desharnais found the most success with in Edmonton. We were chatting with Bagged Milk on Friday. He was talking about Brett Kulak being the best partner for Vincent Desharnais. I wonder about that too. When they made the trade for Erik Brannstrom, I wondered if it was going to be he's going to rotate in as the 7th guy. Obviously he's in Abbotsford now, but I did wonder about that when they made that trade was maybe he'll play some games. Obviously it's not going to happen just yet, but I did wonder about that as well.
At even strength, I'd rather have a Brannstrom Desharnais pair than Forbort Desharnais.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is I imagine the coaching staff is expecting Forbort to play a huge role in the penalty kill, like first unit PK. We know how important special teams are in the NHL. Forbort played a massive role on Boston's PK over the years. Boston's PK has always been really high end. Forbort is a legit PK specialist. I imagine that's how the team views him. So yeah, at even strength, I would much rather have Brannstrom in that spot over Forbort, given that the guy on the opposite right side is more of a bigger, heavier presence anyway, and probably wants a speedier partner. But I just don't know if the coaching staff, I shouldn't even say I don't know. I don't think the coaching staff wants the trade-off of, okay, well, we might be a bit better moving the puck on the third pair, but it could come at a significant cost on the PK.
Yep, because that's where Forbort excels.
And in the preseason, to be honest, like I've seen subtle signs of why Forbort's had so much PK success. He is so good with his stick, just clogging shooting lanes, clogging passing lanes. He has a really good defensive feel for when to apply pressure, how to collapse on different lanes, just disrupts plays. I'm like, okay, he's really experienced and really good at this part of the game.
Canucks didn't allow a power play goal in the preseason, right?
I can't remember.
No,
There are too many preseason games.
They definitely did.
Are you sure about that?
They didn't.
Yeah,
They allowed a power play goal. They didn't have a perfect PK in the preseason.
I don't.
How many did they let in?
I remember doing a rink wide, and we do our little scoreboard
Didn't
at the top. And
Edmonton
Edmonton
get that
definitely
one?
scored one.
Did they?
In the final game?
Yeah, I'm gonna look this up, Quads. You seem very confident in something
Even in
that
the
I
second
know
last
is not
one.
true.
Okay, I'm pretty sure. I want to look this up.
No, they were perfect.
I don't know.
I love how
Let me see, I'm
everybody's
pulling it up
Googling
right
and I'm
now.
sitting here with a smile on my face. Anybody in the chat? No,
Okay,
I don't think they gave up a power play goal.
Where's the score?
They didn't in the final game.
No, they did. Ben Gleason. I told you in the penultimate preseason game. Ben Gleason.
Yeah, the 5-1 loss, right?
What is
No,
penultimate?
this is
Second last.
Oh,
Quads, you're a writer.
Um,
You should know that.
I don't write that word.
That was a game where Edmonton won in the shootout.
Oh yeah, the shootout win.
Yeah, I was like, who the hell
Was
is
that
Ben
their only
Gleason?
one?
and why is
Was
he
that the
playing
only
on
one
top
they
unit?
scored?
I mean, come on. I'm not gonna go through all the other preseason games for you.
My point being, the Canucks PK looked strong, and they looked strong in that final game against Edmonton, where Edmonton actually had their first unit power play out there. They looked really strong throughout the preseason, and Forbert's part of that. That was what I was trying to say. I don't know why I made everybody detour as badly as I did. Got to buy us some time till some Allvin stuff rolls in. Has this thing started yet?
I have no idea. I have not seen anything yet. I've had Twitter open, all the different people that might be sharing, and I have not seen anything from that press conference.
Are there any more questions right now, or can I take us a second to talk about the docuseries?
Yeah, go ahead.
So the Amazon docuseries, I was so hyped for this, right? I watched a couple episodes so far. I'm gonna watch the rest, but watched the first one with Nylander and Pasternak, and then the captain's one with Hughes in it. I'm gonna say I'm a little underwhelmed. I don't know how many people agree with me or not, but my main gripe is that I don't think they showed enough behind the scenes content of the players at the rink and like team-based activities. They showed the behind the scenes of the players at home and whatnot. But for example, in the first episode, like the Leafs just lost Game 7 in OT. I want to see what the locker room looks like. There was no footage of Matthews, Marner. Is anybody talking after the game? Is it just quiet? But even not necessarily those painful moments where players aren't going to obviously want to be filmed, but even just things like on the team plane, for example. I did a story this past year talking to a bunch of players about just the fun things that go on the team plane, just the different dynamics of like seatmates, and you got the card tables and a lot of the banter, and how players will sometimes like dissect the game the night before. If it was a bad game, they'll kind of like let the demons out, or whatever. They'll just like shoot the breeze. Like, why not give content there where you're actually going to get the personality of players? Also, just like team meetings in these high leverage playoff situations, for example. In episode 1, like, show me what each team's game plan is for, like, what's Boston doing to try and shut down Auston Matthews. Now, you don't have to, I'm sure they'd have to blur certain things out so they don't reveal everything, but just like take us into like a team meeting, a video session. And I also just thought in the Hughes episode, there should have been more interviews from the people who know him, rather than, I felt like it was too heavy on narration from, like, I love Pete Blackburn, but why is a guy from Boston so heavy on the narrative, on the telling the story of Hughes and this Canucks season? Why don't you get JT Miller, one of the best quote machines in the league, to talk about Hughes as a leader? Why don't you get more out of Pettersson, who made a short cameo, more from Rick Tocchet?
More from me, more screen time for me.
You're a journalist. I don't. That's the thing.
That's what I mean. Why didn't they get a
journalist.
local guy? Why didn't they get a local guy? Like,
But
me?
even then, like, just hear from the people that actually spend as much time as possible with the people in question. So a little bit underwhelmed. It wasn't terrible, and I thought the Hughes and the captain's episode was definitely better than the Nylander Pasternak one, but a little bit underwhelmed. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I agree with you that I should have got way more screen time. That's a good take. No, you're right. And that's the thing. Like, people in the chat are reacting to it right now. And Rajcraft said NHL players are boring, is what I got from the series. And you haven't watched the whole series. Neither have I. But this is what basically every episode is, from what I've heard. Like, apparently the best one is the Oilers one because you get that raw emotion from Connor McDavid until they close the curtain, right? Like, I don't know if that was necessarily supposed to make it in per se, but obviously it did make it in. But I think that's the most emotion. That's the most behind the scenes you actually saw.
But like card table is a perfect example. Like I've
Yeah.
talked to these guys, like they do shoot the breeze. They do have personalities at the card table, and
Show it.
just like show at least something, or like I don't know, like players. I don't know. I just feel like there's more there. Like being around players for 5-6 years now. Yeah, they're not the most hockey players aren't the most interesting personalities, but there's more depth there. There's more than what I saw in the first in the couple episodes that I saw.
Oh, Tyson Cole's watching the show. He said the Canucks had the second best PK. The Leafs were the only team to go perfect in the preseason. So the Canucks only let in one power play goal. I was right. Kinda.
No, you weren't.
I said kinda.
That's such a quads thing to be like, I was right about something you were totally wrong about.
And then you whisper kinda. I don't know where these Patrik Allvin quotes are. We might have to close out the show without anything from Allvin. Nothing yet,
We
eh,
can always
Jacob?
just talk about it tomorrow.
Yeah, we can talk about it tomorrow. I think we'll have to because we're having to. I was gonna make a joke because you said, "Oh, there was nothing like the Leafs behind the scenes, like team meetings." I was gonna say they didn't have any. They just thought, whatever. It's another year. It's fine. We'll be back next year. We all make millions of dollars. Mitch Marner to hit the gritty out of the locker room. Had no interest in talking about what happened. Do you want to get to our Bet365 bet of the day and close it
Let's
out?
do it.
All right. How much playoff baseball you been watching?
How much do you think I've been watching?
How much do I think you've been watching? Not much, but I'll tell you tonight, I'm calling the Kansas City Royals to tie up the ALDS. It was really close in game one. The Royals enter as underdogs plus 130 on the money line. You can take the Kansas City Royals to beat those New York Yankees tonight. Like I said, plus 130 odds over at Bet365, a proud partner of Canucks Conversation. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Be sure to use code VANBONUS when you sign up for an account. Last one here. Oh, here we go. It didn't get tweeted for some reason. I can't believe nobody tweeted this. Jeff Patterson just sent me the whole thing. Like, it's done. It's done. Stall a little bit.
All right. Usually it's the other way around where I'm asking you to stall.
Oh, this is funny. Allvin said, I think Boston apologized about the Patera situation. And then he said, but that's part of the business. Yuri, he told the staff in Abbotsford how much he liked it and he wanted to be a part of it. And we're excited to continue to work with him. Atu making the team out of camp. Atu's going into his third year pro and learning the details, playing a 200-foot game. Very smart, committed, and just coming in every day to prove something. And he earned every day here. That being said, it's not going to get any easier. Someone was asking about Ratu during anyone else, and I wanted to say that. They were saying, okay, well, what happens to Ratu when players get healthy? And again, this is going to be a situation where Ratu certainly earned the shot to be there on opening night, but because of his waiver eligibility, like he's just able to go right down to Abbotsford. When they get Pius Suter back, when they get Dakota Joshua back, and that forward group becomes a little bit more crowded, he's going to be among the first candidates to go back down, unless he really keeps up that level that we saw during those two preseason games where he was phenomenal. Unless he's really a high level contributor for this team, he's probably still a candidate to get sent down pretty early, but he earned the opening night roster spot, and that's a story, and that's what matters.
And that's okay too, because it's rare that over an 82 game season, you're going to have extended stretches where every forward on your team is healthy.
Yeah, Allvin called it a tough decision to send Arshdeep back. Rick and I met him this morning. Still have a couple days before opening night. Things could change, but again, very pleased with his season last year, the way he prepared himself for the summer. And I thought from Penticton to yesterday, I thought he just got better and better, especially the last two games against the full lineup of Edmonton there. I thought he carried himself really well. Okay, I'm trying to see if we got a Demko injury. Okay, Allvin said nothing has really changed in terms of his timeline. Thatcher is very committed. He's been skating almost every day on his own or with the injured guys, and he's doing his rehab. I think at this point, the luxury of having Seelovs and Lankinen here, we don't feel we need to rush Thatcher, and I think that's important for his long-term health. So yeah, we know the Canucks aren't going to rush Thatcher Demko back from this. He's also around the guys. He seems to be very upbeat and in good spirits. Dakota Joshua has been skating for a week now with Jason Krog and someone else in the morning. I'm reading a really bad transcript of this because it's like very
auto, like,
it's like an auto. Like I'm guessing a lot of these. Well, not guessing, but they're not the words that I'm reading, but I know what he's trying to say. I know what he's trying to say. Says Joshua is making progress. Same thing there with no real timeline. Been a tough couple months from here, but being around the guys and being around the team, he's definitely making progress. Okay, got asked about Erik Brannstrom. We talked about Brannstrom within our staff with his ability to move pucks and be a power play option. We didn't feel that the competition we had and the makeup of the roster at that time, we felt there wasn't really a fit there, but definitely a guy that our pro scouts see as an option for us. Now that he cleared waivers here means we can continue to work with him and hopefully be a depth option and letting some of the younger players grow their game more in the atmosphere with what we're able to do. It's just crazy. This thing's all over the place. How long is this audio? This audio is 14 minutes. I would say we could just play it all on the show, but I'm just going to try to get the big stuff. Ask some questions about Abbotsford. That had to come from Faber for sure. What else do we have? Oh yeah, talked about accruing cap space. Folks, this is all going to be on Canucks Army. Just go read it at CanucksArmy.com. We're going to have a full breakdown of it, I'm sure, in a matter of moments. Tyson, if you're listening to this, pick up the pace. I'm just kidding. We're going to have a lot here.
Only kind of.
Tyson works well. Tyson works fast. He works well. We're going to have all of this on CanucksArmy.com in a matter of moments. Busy day here at Canucks Convo. We'll be back to break it all down tomorrow. We got the answers to the big things that we were looking for with Allvin. But we'll close it out there. Do you have any final thoughts, Harm?
Nope.
Okay. People are saying they got to rewind because some people missed what we were talking about, the opening day roster. Yeah, start of the show, folks. Rewind. We are losing listeners, I should mention. People are just dropping off, trying to go listen to Allvin actually speak. So find it soon on CanucksArmy.com, but we'll close it out there. For my co-host Harman Dial and our technical producer Jacob Lazar, my name is Dave Guadrelli. Thank you so much for listening to an episode of Canucks Conversation. Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube live chat every day with us, folks.